Good morning.
Good morning, Claire.
So today on our Spotlight on interview series, we have Tracy. How are you?
I'm great. We're finally doing this. Claire and I have been postponing this for, I think, 2 months now. Our schedules just didn't line up, but finally we're here.
We made it. So can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and how you got there, just so people can know who you are?
Okay, hopefully it won't take too long. It's a really long-winded story, as you know. So I work with JLL. We're essentially a real estate company. So everything to do with real estate, buying buildings, selling buildings, doing research on buildings, managing buildings, apartments, commercial buildings, industrial, retail. We kind of do it all. In particular, I work in the property asset management business. So essentially, our clients are people who own large buildings, normally huge shopping centres and warehouses, big commercial buildings that most people will work in. And I work as the property technology innovations lead for APAC. So essentially what I do is I look at everything to do with prop tech, which is technology for the commercial property industry in particular. So that can mean looking at new startup tech, so fun things from robot drones doing window cleaning, and then all the way to determining if a piece of technology is suitable for the APAC region or country, and then down to how would we implement that into a particular region or particular building. So yeah, essentially everything technology I look at. In terms of how I got here, it's actually a really interesting one because I have no experience on paper or any degree in terms of technology or IT. So I'm actually an environmental engineer at heart. That's actually my course that I studied in university. So if you ever want to talk climate change or carbon tax, that's absolutely down my alley. I've actually got here by saying yes to things that no one else said yes to. So my first job out of uni was working for BHP Billiton, which is what they were called. And they're a giant mining corporation in Australia. I actually flew over to Western Australia, so not even Perth, but three hours from Perth. This is when I was 18. So I hadn't finished my university course yet. So I was in my first year of university. I saw that people were doing internships, and people typically do internships in their last year of uni, but I was really gung-ho, very driven very early on, and I was very keen for adventure. I still lived at home when I was 18, so I thought this is a perfect opportunity for me to not even get out of home, but move to the other side of the country. I was in Melbourne at the time, and so I managed to talk my way into this internship, which was essentially I was environmental graduate in a mine 3 hours from Perth. And that was fun. Least to say, I found out I didn't want to do mining, but what it did give me is it gave me connections within the company. And so sort of a couple of years later, I was again looking to do another internship. And I had some contacts in BHP, and they said, hey, are you interested in working in the facilities team? And this was about 12 years ago, where the environment and facility management was the same team. There wasn't that much of a focus on ESG back then. So a lot of the sustainability tasks and targets were really driven by the property and facility management team. And they were doing a big job in Singapore. Essentially, they were moving 3 offices into a new single tenancy. They needed someone over there just to help them move people. So all the mundane things, so things like access cards, organizing the boxes, organizing inductions, things that you kind of would never think about the facilities team were looking after. So I said yes to that, and I flew over there, kind of partially funded because I really wanted this opportunity to have that Asia experience. And while I was over there, they were so busy that there were a lot of odd tasks that just would get left to the side. And those are things like in Singapore, they've got green mark instead of green star, but it's very similar in terms of you trying to meet a certain credential to get a rating. And a lot of these meetings were in the consultant's office, and no one wanted to go. So I just said, I'll go. So inherently ended up sitting in these green mark meetings and writing down a list of all the things that the tenancy would have to do in order to ensure that we would meet a certain rating. And so through that, kind of gained some experience in the green building certificate industry. which then led me on to the technology piece. BHP were really at the forefront back then, about 10 years ago, and putting together smart building system for their tenancy. It's very unusual for tenants to do that. We don't even see that today. And then that got the ball rolling. I was invited into that kind of circle because no one really wanted to do it. I think with technology, it's kind of considered a bit of black magic. People don't know anything about it. But the truth is, no one knows anything about it when you first get into it. So I was kind of like the yes person. I didn't know if it interested me, but I just said yes because no one wanted to do it. So I kind of saw that as an opportunity to really be responsible of something. And I think when you're as young as 21, 22, that's you want that kind of feeling, even though you don't necessarily have the experience for it. And that gave me that kind of feeling. So that's kind of how I am now. I suppose that technology journey has then led on for the past decade, taking me, I guess, back to Australia, to Sydney, where we are now.
Wow, that is a really cool journey. You've kind of had exposure to a lot of different people and roles and cultures over the years. So obviously there's quite a big disparity in leadership, and particularly in big corporates and big companies. And why do you think we see so much of that?
It's an interesting question, isn't it? I guess especially coming from myself and you, we're pretty career driven and we are at that level in our careers. So I often think it's really a combination of things. It's probably lack of support, number one. I think the industry, very male dominated industries like the construction, mining, property, are very male dominated, and that can be really intimidating. It takes a really strong willed person or someone who knows themselves very well and can back themselves really well to be able to go out there, put themselves in a room of typically all men who are usually 10 or 20 years older than you, usually white. That can be extremely intimidating, just being different, especially when you're young and you don't think you have the experience or the expertise to be in that room. And I can tell you, and I'm sure you know as well, that while this facade seems very confident in a meeting, in underneath the water, it is a duck, frantically
Yeah,
panicking.
you be sweating. You're
Yeah,
sweating.
sweating bullets. I think if you're not that person or you're not that person yet, it's hard to get there. You just think, why? And as women, I think we think a lot as well. We overthink a lot. And I think as a young female, you might think, why would I put myself in this situation? It makes me really uncomfortable. I'm not happy doing it. I'm not enjoying it. So I'm just not going to do it. And women, to that sense, are very good at prioritizing these things to say, if something doesn't give me happiness, and I'm just not going to do it. So it's about, I think, that lack of support is that we don't really have anyone else's hand to hold, or the support that's given to us, which is by men, and typically very, very good men do reach out to give us that support. It's a very male kind of support. And that is, a bit of a cold touch rather than a soft touch.
It's a bit of just go, you'll be fine.
Yes, and they're not thinking of all the overthinking that female is doing.
Yeah, hands up who's been in a boardroom and had to argue a contract with 15 men 20 years older than you. It can be a scary process. But I found that, the first 30 or so times you do it, you'd be sweating, absolutely sweating, like going red, the whole lot. But then you kind of just get used. It's like exposure therapy. You just kind of get used to it eventually, and it becomes less scary over time.
Definitely. I think, of course, there's something there to say that if you're not scared every time, then probably you need to change jobs, because your job should always be challenging. And I think there is the whole mindset thing, to just remember that, if I have to do it, just enjoy it. Turn that mindset around to saying, instead of it being scary, think of it as a really exciting opportunity that you get to present. And as soon as you think of it as something that you want to do, it becomes something that's fun, and you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to build off that adrenaline that you're getting. And that, I think, counts for everything, not just, going to a boardroom meeting, but conferences and public speaking or negotiating, if you can turn that mindset around, then that makes all the difference.
Yeah, start to think of it more like skydiving than being like chased by a bear.
Yeah.
Both adrenaline inducing, but in a very different way. So kind of, can you tell us like what made you so passionate about joining the GU? And then for those who are watching and don't know, Tracy's actually on the board management as well.
I think the GU really grew out of conversations that actually you and I had. You know, we worked previously together and kind of found that bond through being one of few women in this industry. And even after we stopped working together, we kind of would meet up sort of every 2 months and just talk about the problems we would encounter, and then talk about our friends and our friends' problems that they were encountering. They were all the same, even if we didn't all work in property or technology. So I think that's what I'm really passionate about with the GU. It really resonates with how I work in my career, which is the fact that I always say yes. Doesn't matter what industry you work in, always say yes and always get the opportunity to know someone, because you never know if that may help you in your own career or with a project you're working on or in your personal life down the track. So I really liked that the GU was different in that it brought together people of different industries. Because I think when you work in a industry, whether that is real estate or healthcare or education, you tend to kind of stick in that industry, and it's really hard to get out of that and really hard to meet new people outside of the industry. I think being able to do that in the GU is great, because there are things that I'm doing in the real estate industry that probably relate to the education industry and vice versa. And I'm trying to find solutions to problems that they have probably already solved. So it's about putting off the back of synergies and things that other people have already done, because that's just easier than reinventing the wheel. But I think also I kind of recognize that there's not a lot I can do as a single person, but when you bring together sort of this group of very career-driven, very motivated, high-achieving women, and individually, there's not a lot we can do, just because, you know, we don't have the time, we don't have the money. But if we pull together all our resources, we talk about we don't have the time. If each of us can give up, you know, 1 hour or 2 hours of our time a year in exchange for something that's a bigger picture, I think that's something a lot of women are willing to do.
100%. And I'm with you. I've learned so much from people who I've met through, you know, the Irish community or through university or whatever, who are like completely just not in my industry. And I've gone, oh my God, I never thought about that. And no one has ever said that in like my world. And then you get this huge crossover with, you know, things that are just weirdly useful in general life and around just the workplace, full stop, which I think has been quite enlightening for me. So on a slightly more personal level, what's something people might not know about you?
We've talked about this. I know what you want me to say. I'll pick two. I really enjoy playing video games. And I'm picking this one because they both have stories to them. I love playing video games so much that if you got me talking about it, I just would not stop. And eventually this word kind of got around within the company that I like to play video games. And they were actually looking for a content creator for this phone app that JLL runs for our clients. And they needed someone to write video game reviews. So that sort of, you know, me couldn't shut up my mouth I now write a regular video game reviews column for JLL. So that's the one thing I like. And the second thing, which you love, I know, is that I love K-pop. I love it so much. I love how catchy the music is, how flashy the performances. I love the styling. I will like fly to countries or like tie up work trips to go see concerts. And this is something my company knows. I tried to keep it a secret, and they found out that I had tied up some sort of, you know, Thailand trip with a concert that was going on there. But now they'll use it sort of leverage to get me over to certain countries. So I love that. But where this leads to is I love K-pop so much that I actually manage a social media fan account, but I managed it kind of too well, and I grew it. It's got 15,000 followers now. I know, and I'm a content media manager. And on that account, I would do certain things. Like I would write what we call theses on like music and interpretation of K-pop and all of that. And it led to actually me being invited onto a K-pop podcast. And I know nothing about music, but what I wanted to really say with two of these examples of video games and the K-pop is just like never underestimate what your own passion where that can lead you, because it can just open so many doors, as it has for me.
100%. And actually, it's funny, I was talking to Jason, my husband, about this yesterday, but not about you and the K-pop, but how like if you learn a skill or you do a thing, however completely random and unconnected it might seem to everything else you have going on, it will probably come back at some point and connect in. So it's always worth kind of putting yourself out there and just going with it.
Exactly.
And if there's like somebody watching this going, oh my God, she's done all these cool things, she's like traveled all over, like how do I get to there? What kind of advice would you give them?
Okay, 2 bits of advice, I think maybe. Say yes, always say yes, but there's a caveat around it. Don't say yes to menial work that people are just going to give you that's not, that people typically give women because we don't know how to say no. So things like binding, printing, administration, looking after clients. No, don't say yes to that. Say yes to things that scare you that no one else wants to do, because you're going to become an expert in that field because no one else wants to do it. And if you think you can't do it, that's wrong. You can do it. Everyone in every job ever has learned on the job. Trust me. So just say yes, and it will lead you places. And I think secondly, don't shy away. I think that quote, don't put baby in the corner. Don't put yourself in the corner. I know it can be really intimidating being in a room of people that look nothing like you, that you may have nothing in common with, but use that to your advantage, because your difference is going to be what makes you stand out. It's going to be what makes people remember you. So if you're in a meeting or an event or anywhere, go out there, back yourself, go say hello, be enthusiastic. Like enthusiasm really goes a long way. That's what makes people memorable. Wear the red dress, don't wear black. If you're going to be different if you're already different in a male dominated industry because you're female, or you're already different because you're younger, or you're come from a certain culture, use that to your advantage. Be even more different, because you're now building your own personal brand. So that's probably the advice I'd give.
Nice. Thank you for that. And we are just about out of time, but thank you so much for coming on to talk to us today.
Flew by.